Hello, everybody. I think that there are still a few people in the back. We are starting. If you could come up front, grab a drink or grab a plate of food and head up to the front so we can begin. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then we'll get started if that's okay. So first off, how many of you have been here to a Products That Count event before? Great, raise your hands. Awesome. Great. So as you are probably familiar with, every month we bring in a product leader, such as G2 here, and they share with us a unique or something they have not shared with anyone before about making great products. So tonight we're going to have a great speaker to talk about making products at Box. And before we get started, I did want to thank our partners and also make a special announcement. By the way, my name is Boone. I am the San Francisco chapter head for Products That Count. I just recently started, and I'm here in place of SC, who is here quite often, but could not be here tonight. So I wanted to thank, first and foremost, Yelp, who has been with us since the beginning. They offer us a space that we can come and gather and bring in the food. They're a wonderful team. They also are hiring, and if you are looking for a great team to work with, I highly recommend go speak with the team in the back there. There's a red sign, a Yelp sign in the very, very back. They're waving. They're hiring all sorts of engineers, designers, product people, everyone. I also would like to thank AmpliTube, SCA, and Mighty Capital invested in AmpliTube. Oops. One second. We'll go there in a second. If you are looking for engagement analytics around your users and your applications and the things, how to improve it, take a look at AmpliTube. mParticle, great partner, collecting data, aggregating data across channels and all of your products. And then Pragmatic Marketing, if you are want to learn more about making great products, learn more about marketing your products, Pragmatic Marketing is a great place to go. We don't usually do announcements, but we do have a special announcement tonight that I wanted to read about. And so, as I mentioned, SC and Mighty Capital, they are investors in AmpliTube, and Amplify is their product management conference. And tonight they are offering a special discount to Products That Count community members. So they are giving a $600 discount to the Amplify event, which is happening on October 9th. It's happening in a really cool location. It's newly renovated Fillmore West downtown in San Francisco. And it's going to feature product management leaders and gurus such as Dan Riley, S.E. Moati, our founder, and GM and product exec Tatiana Mahmood, and former VP of product Gibson Biddle, and many, many more. So the discount code, I think on the next screen here, I don't know if they put the discount code on there, but they're at least having some of the people that are there. The discount code is PTCFF. That's PTCFF. You'll get $600 off. It's going to be a great conference. I highly, highly recommend that you go. So with that, we are now going to hear from G2, the CPO of Box. And would you like to go ahead? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And awesome, thank you. So I'm G2 Patel. I run the Box product organization. Thank you all for coming. I think this room is, where's the camera? Is that the camera for recording, or is it being recorded or not recorded? Okay, so is that the camera? Where should I be looking? This way or that way? This one and that one. This one and that one. Okay, two of them. Awesome. So what I thought we'd do, the success of this hour of your life that you're dedicating to me, so thank you for that, would be entirely dependent on the quality of the questions that you answer, that you ask. And so if you ask bad questions, then this will be a waste of your time. And if you don't ask questions, it'll be an even bigger waste of your time. So I really, really engage and ask a lot of questions. And then just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've been at Box for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I used to be CEO of a company called Simplicity, which was a competitor to Box. So it was a very awkward relationship. Then I moved over to Box. Prior to that, I was CTO at Documentum. And then before that, I used to run a strategic consulting startup in the collaboration space. You can judge me for it, but I've spent my entire life thinking about documents, which is a really sad way to live life. So you should not do that. And then the good news over here is, this is a highly competitive market. And we compete with companies like Dropbox, and so Dropbox is right here. So thank you for coming. And so we can, if there's questions for Dropbox, what's your name, sir? Stefan can answer them. If there's questions for Box, I can answer them. But we're both good friends. No, we're a slightly better product, but that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'm totally entirely kidding. Actually, I'm not. All right, so let's get started. So what I thought I'd do is just get everyone warmed up and the juices flowing on the kind of things that we've learned at Box on the lessons that we should actually think about when you're building a at-scale product that actually straddles between consumer sensibility as well as an enterprise kind of buying motion. So if you think about Box, we are focused on, we've got about, just to give you a little bit of an overview on Box, we are a cloud content management company the way we think about it, and we've got about 87,000 customers, a little over 60 million users, and 69% of the Fortune 500 are using Box today. So it's an at-scale product, been around for about 13 years. And if you think of the core problem that we're solving, it is to make sure that people are more effective in the way that they manage their information, store it, share it with people, collaborate with it. And essentially, if you think about what Box does, it fundamentally changes cultures within organizations where the way that people work changes. And when you change the way that you work, there's a massive shift of culture that happens in companies. So as companies are getting more progressive, getting different kind of workforce, they're getting disrupted with technology companies, even if they're in the legacy industries. They want to make sure that they can work in a more agile, transparent way. And as that happens, companies like Box actually become central to their transformation journey. So that's kind of the overall list. If you look at some of our customers, they are the really interesting part about this business, and the reason I'll talk a little bit about how you build a product for that kind of mentality is we've got the same product that serves three people, kind of three-person outfits, that also serves GE and Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble and Eli Lilly. And so it's the exact same SKU that actually goes across the spectrum from a three-person outfit to someone who might be a 1,000-person outfit to 10,000 people to GE has about 300,000 employees. IBM has 400,000 employees. Those are customers of ours on the higher end. And then, if you look at a company like Ameriprise, they use it for 14 million of their customers. You actually see millions of users on their end that also end up using it. So it's, from a product standpoint, it's interesting on how you finesse a product strategy that actually has the ability to span the spectrum. And the other thing that's tricky about the business from a product standpoint is typically in the enterprise market, the buyer is different from the user. And so the economic buyer that you have to cater to is someone, if you go into a mid-sized company, it will be someone who's like the CIO and an individual might buy. If you go into a large company like GE, there's a committee that buys. So you have to actually cater to a committee that might include a CIO, that might include a CISO, that might include a line of business person, that might include a compliance officer. And each one of them have different kind of requirements that they have to kind of think through. And so as you're building a product, designing a product, that's pretty important to keep in mind. What are you catering to for the buyer? What are you catering to for the user? And how do you make sure that you continue to drive engagement for the user, even though the buyer has to make the decision for going then? How do you then make sure that when there's a trade-off you have to make where if you go cater to a buyer's requirement, you might impact your weekly active use, what kind of mechanisms do you have for making the trade-offs, right? And so those are the higher level challenges if you start thinking about is, can you build a single, and then what we decided to do to make it harder on ourselves is we said, let's also use the same product to go out and straddle multiple different markets. So we think of ourselves as going out and addressing about a $45 billion market. So we are trying to disrupt the file storage industry. We're trying to disrupt the enterprise content management market. Enterprise file sync and share for consumer grade tools needs to go to the enterprise, and then also custom apps that get built. So there's a multitude of different kind of markets which comprise of about $45 billion of total addressable market in size. We'd like to make sure we shrink that from 45 billion to 10 billion and then try to take 80% of that market. So that's kind of the way that we at least think about the overall thesis of the business and how we want to kind of go at it. So that's enough about Box. I wanted to set that up so that you can all think about the overall set of problems that we're trying to solve, and then we'll go into so what are the key lessons that we've learned And I think there's some of these lessons are very obvious in Silicon Valley, but the moment you go east of Fremont, no one knows about them. And I think as a product community, what we should do is just make sure that there's a level of awareness of how great products get built, because I think the one thing that I would like to see happen during my lifetime, and I'm really fucking old, so it might take, it might not be that many years left. However, like what I'd like to see in my lifetime is some mechanism to say that, the domain of product management, building excellent products, is not just tied to a geography, but it should be something that becomes common knowledge throughout the world. And you're starting to see different geographies start to get there where there's, a lot of innovation. But I think there's a secret sauce that the Valley has right now, which is still pretty differentiated from other places in the market. So I think we need to make sure that this gets to be more codified and institutionalized as you take it to the market. So what I thought I'd do is start this with a very, in the next 10, 15 minutes, quickly go through what are the top 10 lessons, at least that I've learned personally, for building products with a company like Box and also with other companies that I was part of. And then we'll just open it up to questions to see if there's, you can take it in any direction, how we structure the organization, or what the competitive landscape looks like, how we think about investing in something, what motivates people, what kind of people do we go out and hire. We are, of course, hiring a lot. Stefan, please see if you can come join the team. It'd be awesome. Yep. We'll go from there. I don't mean to create awkward moments between you and me, man. I'm just like trying to. Okay, thanks. So let's go with the first lesson. The first lesson that I think is the most important lesson that at least I've taken out from product management is picking the right problem to solve is 90% of the issue. Like if you pick the wrong problem, even a great solution doesn't really go help you build a great business. So there's a theory that I have, which is the quality of, and this is actually not my theory, it's Sam Altman's theory that I've shamelessly plagiarized, but the quality of the problem that you pick is actually directly proportionate to the success of the outcome. So the harder the problem, typically the more successful you're likely to be in the outcome. And that's very counterintuitive. It's like, why would you pick hard problems to be more successful? It's because the kind of people you attract to really difficult problems are at a very, very different caliber than if you pick a mediocre, kind of uninspiring problem. So when you start to think about what problems you want to solve, make sure that these problems are real and they're high quality problems. And if you solve them, the impact would be pretty meaningful because you'll actually attract the best minds in the business to come help you solve that problem. And eventually, software is a people business. So the better the minds that you attract, the more you're going to have as the ability to succeed in that. So this is one of my first lessons, that if you're an individual PM or you're someone who is a manager or someone who runs a product org, pick the right quality problems to solve. And picking the problem to solve is actually 90% of the issue. Once you actually have the right problem, most things get pretty easy after that because you'll get the right talent in place. So that's number one, rule number one. Rule number two is whatever you end up building, make sure that you're thinking in 10x kind of terms. So don't build something that's 20% better than what your competitor might have, because that's not enough to move the inertia over from what they're using to something that you're going to have that's brand new. So do something that's 10x better than what you might have with an existing solution in the market. And if you don't think you can build something that's 10x better, then you might want to think about partnering, because the motivation for moving especially in the enterprise, a product from one provider to the other when you're 20% better is there's far too much inertia, and our customers and users don't think about our product all day long. We do, right? And so we have to make sure that when we do move it over, that it's orders of magnitude better. So if you look at a company like Tesla, or you look at a company like Uber or Lyft, these are all companies that actually, when they went into a market, built something that was 10x better than the incumbent solution that was there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have actually been able to see the movement over to that side, right? And so that's the second rule: is think 10x in everything that you do, and don't build too many you'll always have capabilities that are incrementally better because you're trying to catch up. But if you don't have at least a few 10x rules, you probably won't go out and have a massive success and a massive win, is the way that we think about it. Number three is you have to eventually make sure that we have this rule called 51-49, because you always think about, are you thinking about the buyer? Are you thinking about the user? The user always wins, right? And you have to make sure that you're building experiences that people love and there's an emotional attachment to it, and at least make sure that you're attempting to do that. Sometimes you'll succeed, sometimes you'll fail, but if you don't even pay attention to making sure that there's a level of attention to quality and how people are going to viscerally feel about the product, I think it's going to be a pretty underwhelming kind of end experience that you'll create. So the third one is build experiences people love. By the way, this was something that was very counterintuitive, but now it's been proven by the world's largest kind of company, which is a $1 trillion company. When you build experiences people love, people keep paying for it over and over again. And look what Apple's done, right? So it's an overused example, but something that actually we take pretty seriously. The fourth one, and this is a complete mystery for anyone outside of the Bay Area, but I think is something that's common knowledge in the Bay Area, but is something that's not as well practiced, even though people talk about it, which is obsess about product market fit in the early stages of the business. So when you're incubating a product, the way I think about it is there's 3 phases to a product. The first phase is you have to make sure that you're achieving product market fit. Second phase is you got to get a repeatable selling motion. And the third phase is you invest in scale. If you start with prematurely investing in scale, all you're doing is taking garbage to the market and trying to scale it, which only then causes issues later, and it actually damages your brand. And once you damage your brand, it's very hard to resurrect it, right? And so start with product market fit, which is is there a small group of people that you can identify, a persona with a target use case where people love your product? And if they do, then what will end up happening is that'll be something that you can continue to keep compounding on. But if you don't, then you'll actually start to find that you'll get into you'll take shortcuts, try to prematurely scale, and then your churn numbers will be pretty high. And when your churn numbers are high, SaaS business is just completely fundamentally broken if your churn numbers are high. Like we currently have churn numbers that are sub 3.5%, and kind of 3.5% to 4%, and that's a very healthy churn number to have, because if you think at our scale, $600 million in revenue, we're still trying to keep it at that scale so that you can continue to make sure that you take it very seriously every single time a customer even thinks about churning, let alone churning, right? Number 5 is the way that you get to product market fit is you have to make sure that you're solving retention before you solve growth. A lot of times people will actually focus on the acquisition funnel prematurely when they haven't really figured out a reason why retention occurs in the product to begin with, right? And then it just becomes a leaky bucket. So you have to make sure that when your product is being used, if I use your product once, you have to intrinsically understand why that person would come back and use your product again, and what drives retention, and what behaviors drive retention. Once you master that, then focus on the acquisition funnel for growth. But prematurely growing it, you'll just have a leaky bucket where people will come in and they'll come out, and it's actually a very expensive experiment from a financial perspective, and you use your brand, you lose your brand equity as you're doing it as well, right? And so retention drives growth. Make sure that you're really maniacally focusing on what it takes to retain the customers. Number 6, and this is something that Alex Schultz talks about really eloquently at Facebook, who's the guy that runs analytics for the growth team at Facebook, and is a good friend. And he talks about this whole concept of there's a power user and there's a marginal user. And pre-product market fit, as product people, our bias is to build products for power users. Right? So we'll always go out and say, let me add one more feature that'll make it even better, and then one more feature that makes it even better. The problem is once you've got to product market fit and you need to get to a growth stage where you're going to get millions and millions of people using your product, building something for someone that you've already captured doesn't really help. You got to make sure that you're focusing on the marginal user that occasionally uses your product, that doesn't think about your product that much, and what's going to give them the reason to come back and use your product again. So focusing on the marginal user in your product design, don't ignore the marginal user, because the natural state of product people is to ignore the marginal user, because we eventually all end up becoming power users of our own product. And because we become power users of our own product, it's hard to get out of your mind and into someone else's mind who's a marginal user who barely uses the product and say, why would you use the product? So the capabilities that you need on the feature sets that you might need that optimize for a marginal user are very different from the ones that you might optimize for a power user. And pre-product market fit, definitely focus a lot on the power user. Marginal users don't matter. Post-product market fit, you want to make sure that there's an even distribution between the two. In fact, I would even kind of lean more towards the marginal user than the power user as you're going through it. Is this useful? Is it a complete waste of time? No? You can go back to the pizza room too. The 7th one is like, how do you structure an org? So we are, a pretty large org at this point in time. 23% of our income statement is spent on R&D. And if you think about that and you say, what specifically do we need to do from a guiding principle on how we structure teams? The way that we structure teams is make sure that we keep very small teams, right? And so there's this whole notion that Amazon has of 2 pizza teams. We really take that to heart. So most of our teams are between 8 and 12 people. We've got about 50 different teams that are working on different kind of missions, and each team has a local mission. Each team has a set of roles, which is what that word PPOD stands for. PPOD means each letter stands for a specific role. So the first P is product management, E is engineering, A is analytics, the second P is program management, O is online growth, and D is design. Those 6 roles, when you pull them together, actually form a team and a unit, and that's what we call a pod. And that pod typically has a product leader and an eng leader that drive the tempo of the pod, and they have a local mission. And they have a true north metric, and then they kind of are running their own business with that pod to go drive a level of whether it be weekly active use or whether it be revenue, and they're saying this is how I'm going to run my business, this is what I'm going to do, and then each one of them will interact and work with the ecosystem of other pods because they'll have dependencies on the other pods. What this does is actually democratizes innovation and actually creates a level of autonomy within the teams, which otherwise, if you have very large teams, that autonomy is kind of lost, right? And so that's the thing that we actually end up doing is keep your teams small as you scale your organizations. And if you happen to go and work for a company, don't work for a company where you're part of a 60-person team, because chances are you're just a cog at that point in time. You're not going out and making a difference that's moving the direction and the needle effectively. You just keep, as you scale. So then the question people ask is, well, what happens as you scale the business? As you scale the business, you should have many, many more small teams. What you shouldn't have is large teams that is 50, because at the time when you have 60, 70 people in a team, 70% of the time is spent in just keeping everyone coordinated rather than actually doing innovation. And so there's just a law of inefficiency that kicks in at some point. Number 8 is what do you look for when you hire people? And I think there's a lot of different kind of guidances that people have and what you look for. In my mind, the things that I look for the most is the person hungry? And is the person insanely curious about the world? These are 2 things you can't teach. The rest of the stuff you can teach people, right? But you can't teach hunger. You're either hungry or you're not hungry. You either want to do great things in life or you don't want to do great things in life. I can't teach someone that. So you want to make sure that you hire someone with those properties that are intrinsically baked in. If you are someone that wants to do something and you're looking for a job in product management, make sure that you go into an area where it gives you a unique level of excitement, where you're doing something larger than a job, where you feel like your body of work and your contribution will fundamentally move the needle one way or the other for the world and the way that the outcome is going to be if you're wildly successful. Like the way that we think about Box is, if Box succeeds or Box fails, and we don't know, we might succeed, we might fail, right? But the world is going to look very different if we succeed than if we fail. And we want to make sure that that success state of the world is something that's deeply personal to us. And if that doesn't happen, I think the world will not be as good a place. Like the alternative route could be, okay, you could have just one single vendor that might have all kind of mediocre products that from a large company that go out and do what we do. And that's not the world that we want to see, because what will happen is the next 15 to 20 years, you won't see innovation in the way that people work. And we think that that might actually impact GDP of the world in a pretty material way, because there's 500 million knowledge workers. And if you can't change the way that those people work, then you will actually limit human progress in a pretty material way. And that kind of mission is something that drives us as we think about this, which is why every single time you're in the office until 2 in the morning or working on something like that, it makes it worth it because of the mission, not because of the fact that someone's paying you money or because it's a cool company to work for or because they've got good cafeteria food, right? There's an intrinsic sense of purpose, which actually comes from hunger and curiosity about that. Number 9 is, the half-life of products typically is dramatically reduced over the course of the past 25 years. So I forget the exact stat, but if you looked at the S&P 500 40, 50 years ago and how long a company would stay on the S&P 500, it was like 50 or 100 years. You look at it now, it's 7 years. So the half-lives are shrinking, the product half-lives are shrinking, and so what that tends to do is your innovation cycle is much faster. You can't take 3 years to build a product, because by the time you actually build a product and you ship it out, like you will, it's too late, and the assumptions have changed in the world, and people will work at it completely differently. So you have to make sure that you have very, very short cycle times. What that means is the entire stack cannot be built by yourself. You have to make sure that you pick the strategic components of the stack that you're going to build, and then make sure that you farm out and partner with others for the things that they're going to have. Right? Because if you try to build everything in the stack, you can't build a product in 3 months or 6-month cycles. You'll take much longer. So as a product manager, those decisions on what components do you want to build, what components do you want to partner with, are probably the most important decisions you'll make, because that'll actually impact the velocity much more so than you think, right? And then last one is that purpose really, really, really matters in what you do. So if it's just something that's mediocre, that you don't feel like you can move the needle with the body of work that you're doing, and you don't believe that you have a unique perspective to contribute to that moving of the needle, then I would recommend don't do that job, because you'll just waste your time. And it's a very uneven trade, the way I talk about it, between companies and employees, right? A company gives money to employees, but an employee gives time. Money is replenishable, time isn't. Right? If I think about it, in a 40-year career, you probably have a good 8 to 10 jobs that you're going to do. Take your time to pick the job, pick the right job. Make sure you pick the ones that are actually going to have a meaningful impact on your growth, on your development, and on the world. Because if you pick the wrong jobs, you'll actually piss away 15, 20 years, and before you know it, yes, you'll have made money, but it won't be fulfilling. So that's kind of, was that useful to go through the top 10? That's how we think about at least the rubric. It's not something that's rocket science. But it's something that we think about, and how we hire people, how we develop them, how we coach them, how we think about products, what we want to build, where we want to invest in, all of those pieces. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. And I think my colleague Nikki has, we will bribe people to ask questions so that we have swag as well. But okay, cool. Question. Yeah. Let me give you my.
Okay. So I'm curious, you mentioned a couple of times during those tips about the difference here in the pretty much Bay Area and how we approach product management versus other places. Can you maybe expand a little bit more on that and kind of give your opinion? Do you think that what we're doing here is better than other places, and what makes it that?
I think there are some things that are way better than other places. And there are some things where we have a completely distorted view because we live in a bubble, and we should actually get out a little bit more and see what the rest of the world does, right? So like, for example, not everyone uses an iPhone XS Max in the world. But if we start designing products that are only optimized for the iPhone XS Max, it really, so I think but there are a few things that we do really well. And the things that we do well are ones where this kind of innovation cycle and what it takes to go out and incubate an idea, get it to product market fit, identify a repeatable selling motion, and then scale that business. I think Silicon Valley does better than most places that I've seen it be done in. And you can see that in the businesses, like from the time that a business gets to product market fit, how quickly it scales is actually remarkable. And that's only gotten better over the years than worse. So you look at how quickly Uber scaled, or how quickly Airbnb scaled, or how quickly Facebook scaled, or any of these. Like, it was a very rampant kind of scale trajectory. And that's because they think deeply about where their unique proposition is going to be. They do something that's 10x. They make sure that they actually get to product market fit with a certain set of users in a very large market, then keep expanding logically into near adjacencies, and then find a very repeatable way that they don't sell snowflakes. They're selling things that are repeatable, where they build it once and they sell it millions of times, rather than a model which is like, I'm going to build it once for one customer, then I'm going to build another thing for another customer, build it third time for a third customer, and that just inherently lacks scale. So I think those are kind of basic instincts in the Valley that have not translated well outside of the Valley in products that get built. In some cases they have, in some industries, but not across the board. And I think if we were to take that mindset to more and more places and more industries, I think you'll actually see a much better kind of outcome of core products that create value for users. Now, I do feel like the other thing that has been done from a product standpoint that's different now is every company in the next 20 years is going to be a technology company. So it's not like, oh, you're a software company, you're not a software company. Tell me one company that you think is not going to be a software company and actually survive and have a meaningful existence. You won't have that many, right? If you look at an auto company, it's going to be a software company. You look at an insurance company, it's a software company. You look at a healthcare company, it's a software company. So there's a lot of the principles that we have within how tech companies have operated that are now very applicable on the other side, as we think about identifying a unique value prop, as well as in the scale economics that you do. Yep. Oh wow, this is a great audience. All right, so great, you have a second mic.
I thought the PPOD org structure was interesting. Can you explain the roles a bit?
I'm sorry,
The PPOD.
PPOD? Yeah, so the roles are, and let me so the question is, like, how do you explain the roles on a pod that actually runs? And the way that we do it is, there are, it starts with even team building exercises. So for example, in a lot of companies, how do you do team building? Every functional area goes out and does team building, right? I don't care if my product managers team build among themselves. I care that the pod for governance is building a team among themselves, and that a pod for security is building a team among themselves, because that is the team building should happen in the area where the local mission is tied, right? And you have to have a local mission that's tied to the global mission of the company. And so the first thing that we do in that is make sure that there's a playbook on how to run a pod, and that the running of a pod is making sure that every member in the team, there's no asymmetry of information. Like, everyone has the same set of information that you're having as a baseline to start with. So we as a company, for example, are insanely transparent about the data that we give to our employees. In fact, as a result, we've actually reduced our training windows for every employee and make them an insider, because we share most of the data with everyone, right? And so there's no asymmetry between the executive team and the IC contributor within the organization. Everyone has the same data. In the pod, that's actually even more true. They actually get driven a lot by data that they might have and the market movements that are going on. And there should be no asymmetry between the product manager and the engineer on understanding the data. It is the product manager's job to make sure that that is the baseline that's set, and then make sure that once you have that baseline that's set, then they will work with the engineer. And there's a very clear demarcation of saying the product manager is in charge of the what you build and why you build it. The engineering manager is in charge of how you're going to build it. However, I never take a product strategy meeting, which we do 3 hours of product strategy meetings every week on Fridays, right, with different teams. I never take a product strategy meeting with a team where the engineering manager is not deeply committed to the strategy, co-authored the strategy, and there with us in the strategy. And the way that we run our organization is we don't have a product management group and an engineering group the way that we think about it. We have a build group. And that build group includes engineering, tech ops, design, product management, kind of product ops, technical program management, all of those functions. And we have a single budget. And so, we kind of, we'll easily kind of trade off, numbers between the different teams, because we want to make sure that we're running it as one org and not these artificial functional boundaries. One of the most damaging things you can do as you scale the company is people start creating boundaries in functions rather than creating boundaries by mission and problem area. And what that does is it just actually creates a very different dynamic. There's politics that seeps in that's actually more than it's required. Everyone finger points. Over here, there's no one to finger point with. I have a local mission. We either succeeded or failed. It's very clear when you succeeded. It's very clear when you failed. And so that's how we run it. The other thing that we do is, if it's the design element is a pretty important kind of part of the pod, because in our spec process, we actually have a very explicit stage where, rather than talking too much about the product and what we're going to do, we like to see mocks very, very early on, right? And they have to be, they're fine if they're low fidelity mocks, but we want to see what someone's talking about, because especially in the enterprise, terminology gets used in a very kind of jumbled enough way where people won't really talk about terminology in a crisp enough manner. So what we do is we say, get the mock so you can show me what you're thinking about, because then I might have a different interpretation of your words, but I'm not going to have that much of a different interpretation of the mocks that you show me. So very similar to Amazon, we start with a press release, we do a design mock, then we do an architecture review, and then we actually start building code. But we follow that pretty religiously. Yeah, and then we'll take one over there next.
Could you tell us about your experience with product market fit and methodologies that really work well, and also methodologies that didn't work out?
Yeah, I think when people get too cute on product market fit, it's because they're trying to show that they actually have product market fit when they actually don't. In fact, 90% of the times when people think they have product market fit, they don't. And it's even harder to maintain product market fit once you've achieved it. So it's not like it's a given that you're going to have it all the time. You can lose it at some point in time. So the way that we look at that is retention is the biggest kind of indicator of product market fit in my mind. Like if your retention curve is asymptoting at 10% of your addressable user base by D7, D10, D12, D15, like you don't have product market fit, I don't care what you're saying. In our business, like you might have a retention curve which is very different if it's twice a year at TurboTax, where I'm going to be going out and doing, kind of doing my taxes. So I'm not going to keep coming to TurboTax weekly. But in our business, like the way that we measure our business is people want to come to it daily. People are going to come to it weekly. And so we really look at the daily active users, the weekly active users, monthly active users, and make sure that those retention curves don't asymptote close to zero. They're asymptoting at the 80% range, 70 to 80% range. So that's one very clear indicator of product market fit. The second one is if you have a beta or an early product, one way to tell very clearly if there's product market fit is if you say, what happens if I end of life this product? Like how many customers will scream about it? And how many customers will say, my life would be meaningfully damaged if I took it away? And that actually is a very good indicator of whether or not people really care. You know, one of the things we talk about is don't build too many vitamins in your life. Build painkillers, right? Because vitamins, people don't want to pay for that much, but painkillers, they will. I mean, imagine you go for a surgery, and let's say that, Vicodin costs $60 a pill, and you just went through a back surgery. You're going to pay the $60 for a pill, right? Let's say they increase the price from 60 to 80, you'll still pay it because you got a back surgery and you're in pain. You got to make sure you eat. If the vitamin goes from $2 to $25, you're just going to go to a different vitamin. It's not that critical. It's not that important. So make sure that you're building things that are painkillers, not just vitamins. And we ask that question all the time in how we think about like product market fit. Is it really a problem that is worth solving that customers would be willing to pay for? And by the way, you can't achieve product market fit in my mind in our business until you've actually shown that customers have paid for it. So don't give away products for free and assume that you've gotten a product market fit. They should actually have paid some money because that denotes commitment, and that commitment then can translate to there's interest and there's value that's being received on the end of the kind of food chain. Yep. I think there was a couple questions there, and then we'll come back to you.
So just in terms of picking the right problem to solve, so you very much have right of first refusal, kind of giving your experiences. What made it for you? What made you want to commit to documents for all this period of time? Just because I think one of the things that my current product team is working through is we're an industry leader in whatever space we're currently in, and one of the open questions is, where do we want to invest? And that's starting to cause a bit of an identity crisis. So I just want to understand your framework of, if you have the right of first refusal, if you get to pick anything that you want to do, what's your framework for picking the right problem to solve?
Yeah, so I think there are like three questions packaged in there. So let me try to parse it out. So the first question was like, what made you go into the world of documents? I didn't think about it actually. I say that jokingly, and I spent 25 years in documents. The way I think about it is there is a pool of knowledge workers that can actually fundamentally impact human prosperity over time. And that pool of knowledge workers is about 500 million. Let's say it might, depending on whose numbers you look at, it might be 1 billion if you look at the worldwide market, but it's a very large number of people. And those people spend 8 to 12 hours a day at work. And that 8 to 12 hours a day that's being spent, large amount of that time is inefficiently spent. If you change that dynamic, the leveraged impact you can have on the world and just human progress is pretty phenomenal. And so that seems like a worthwhile problem to spend time on. And then the other thing I truly believe is don't spend time just keeping on switching problems. Because to deeply understand the dynamics of a problem, it takes a while, right? And you have to actually have instinct for that, and that just takes a little bit of time. So like the reason I spent a large amount of time over there was because I felt like the problem firstly had not been solved well enough. And two was, the more I spent time with it, the more instinct I got about it. And the more instinct I got about it, the better I was at it. Now, the one thing you have to be careful of is you have to keep unlearning. I think there was one, I forget who it was that I'd heard this from, but it was Barry Diller. that you have to keep unlearning what you've learned as you get more experience, because you can actually start to create a lot of kind of unconscious biases that you then, if you don't remember, then you'll kind of move back into the wrong side of, you'll be on the wrong side of history. So on one end, pick a problem that is personal to you, that you feel like you have instinct in, it's very hard to be in a business where you can't relate to the problem, which is why, for example, I don't go into businesses like running a healthcare company, because I might not be able to relate to the problem of a medical professional. And so then there's like a dichotomy and an increased complexity. Was over here, I can relate to the problem of lack of productivity at work. I can also relate to the problem of being a hugely unproductive, disorganized guy that needs some tools to get him organized, right? And so those are things that are kind of first-hand instincts that I have that I can actually take and kind of port forward. The second thing is, how do you pick these problems? I think you have to pick a problem where you feel like your perspective, based on your experience, can have a meaningful enough impact that the trajectory of what you will solve will be different if you weren't the one doing it. You aren't just another cog, but that you actually have a unique enough perspective that you bring to the table that without you, the industry would evolve slightly differently than if you were participating in it. And those are the ones that are the most meaningful problems to go out and spend your time on. And remember, be very stingy with your time, because the time that you take to go solve a problem is essentially going to be your legacy when you're there. Now, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I would rather that if I'm staying away from her for those nights when I'm not coming home early enough to put her to bed, it's because I'm actually doing something that's going to be meaningful rather than just, like the good news about the Valley is all of us are going to make money one way or the other. Like money is not the issue. So like the only thing you have to do then is pick the high quality problems that you think you can have the most amount of impact in. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but yeah.
I have 2 questions. I'll give you the first one. You said you were at a document company, CEO of a document company, or
CEO of actually a direct competitor.
A direct competitor. So why did Box win? Why didn't your company win?
That's a great question. So that's a great question. So I worked for a company called EMC. EMC was a storage company. Within the storage company, there was a company called Documentum, which was a software company in the perpetual space, perpetual software licensing space. And I initially joined EMC to go see if Documentum could have a cloud and mobile strategy. It was a lost cause. We wouldn't be able to do it. It had been too long, and you just had to wait for it to die. So then you say, okay, so what do? You go out and buy another company. So we went out and bought a company. That was 8 people. And we scaled the company from 8 people to 100 million within a 2.5-year period, right? And so 100 million in revenues. And the reason it failed was not because the demand, in fact, we were number 1 on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. We actually got to an insane growth rate that you got to that level of trajectory from 0 to 100 million within a 2.5-year period. The reason it failed was because you don't want to be in a company where you're so far distant from the core priority that what you're doing is only marginally interesting to the existence of that company, right? So that was the first lesson I learned, is don't do something that is just kind of a hobby. Do something where your success to that company actually matters in a way that's going to meaningfully change their trajectory moving forward one way or the other. It's an existential crisis for them. Those are the good projects to work on. Second is Dell was buying EMC, and this was actually an important piece. Business models can't be readjusted during market transitions dynamically as fast as we'd like them to, right? And so the business model that was there for EMC was, I am a storage company. That means I ship hardware, I recognize the revenue. Software company, I am actually going out and making maintenance revenue by selling software, and I'm recognizing revenue for selling software. Then it comes to SaaS. SaaS is ratable revenues, right? So I'm selling a $120,000 contract in December, on December 1st. Guess how much I recognize in revenue? $10,000, right? $110,000 is deferred revenue, which means that your Wall Street is not going to give you credit for that $110,000 in that first year. And so when they have a dollar to invest, are they going to invest it in flash storage? Or are they going to invest it in simplicity? Right? And they decided that it's much faster invested in flash storage. Why? Because Wall Street's asking them to grow, and they can't show revenue growth as fast. They're showing bookings growth fast enough, but they're not showing revenue growth fast enough. So there was a structural difference in the core dynamics of the income statement and how the revenue flows that actually made it very unnatural for them to go into a business that was so distant from their core. And this is a great lesson to learn, which is when you go into different businesses, the company has to have a very, very strong willingness to make sure that they go in that business model, and they're not just committing to it for 1 or 2 years, they're committing it for a 10-year period. Because if they don't do a 10-year envelope, it's just very hard for them to sustainably kind of invest as you go through it. So I think we have one more. All right, one more. Okay. I don't know. Share it.
This is I'm going to try to put 2 questions in one. Yeah. So number 2, you said think 10x. How does Box bring testing rigor, product testing rigor to the organization while thinking 10x? Because it could go badly, and then something mission critical like Box's product could blow up and have a 10x effect on your customer, all your metrics. Second thing, also related to that, how do you said you had 50 pods. How do you organize testing across all those between the product?
Okay, so let me address the second one first, which is we have 50 pods. How do you do testing, cross-team dependencies across all of those? On the testing side, we actually have an embedded QE model. So the quality engineers are actually embedded within the team. And every developer is going out and doing the functional and unit tests as they're building it. And we're trying to automate as much as we can. So that's one of the core kind of components. But there's cross-pod dependencies on testing where we actually have to have a QA org. And that's the thing that's a constant challenge. That, by the way, none of these things are where we have perfected the model at Box. Now it's all great and things are just rosy. It's like, no, we're struggling with things all the time. We screw up things all the time. And then you look at that and you go, that was a stupid mistake. We shouldn't do that. Let's go and revert back. But like, for example, the embedded QE model was one that we actually started doing a few years ago. And that's actually really helped in reducing our bug count and making sure that the piece doesn't get stalled. Now, Manoj's question, which is, Manoj and I, by the way, are childhood friends. We grew up together in India. No, I'm not fucking with you. We really did. Can you verify? They're not believing me that I grew up with you. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. So the second thing is like, what about cross-team dependencies? We actually have a very formal process for dependencies where we do a once a quarter rolling roadmap planning exercise where each one of the teams will come in and show what they want to go out and have on the roadmap, and then what the dependencies are with the other teams. Then they have a 2-week period to ratify those, and then make sure that they get commits from the different teams where the dependencies might lie. I give a global prioritization saying for this quarter and for this 6 months and for the next 12 months, these are the priorities. And then they take that into account, and then they come back with addressing the dependencies and come back with a roadmap. And so that kind of cross-team dependency, we've actually struggled a lot with that, and we've gotten a process in place. I'd say we're probably 85% of the way there, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Last 15% is always hard. Your first question, I've forgotten. Can you say it again?
How do you bring rigor, like product testing rigor, to when you bring Think 10x?
Yeah. So firstly, there's a couple of things that are kind of packed in that question, which is a really good question, which is on the product testing rigor. It's important that the thing we're talking about 10x is the value proposition of what you're doing from just a model perspective has to be meaningfully different than what's existing. And I don't believe, by the way, that customer feedback on something that is a breakthrough offering is the greatest way to go out and identify the feature that you want to build. I think customer feedback is a fantastic way to build things for incremental improvements. But I think if Apple had gone to someone and said, hey, imagine this, you've got this BlackBerry, imagine there's going to be no keyboard, and you're going to have this big screen. What do you think? Do you think we'll actually be able to make this happen? People will be like, no, you're nuts. Like, it wouldn't work, right? Now, once you've done that, I think you have to have enough instrumentation and see how long does it take for a customer to actually break through that model and get to a certain state of kind of, feeling steady, and that becomes a habit. And so what we try to do is when we have a 10x feature, we have a very long beta cycle. And that beta cycle tends to be even longer in machine learning products because Unlike core products where it was just a software problem, you had to just put people and go out and build a product. In machine learning, it's very non-deterministic. So like there are times when you wouldn't even know whether or not your hypotheses on what you're trying to solve for is even solvable. And so our beta cycles and the definition of beta has completely changed, where a beta might go on for a year, a beta might actually abandon the product, or a beta might actually take a product into GA. But our beta cycles and the baking cycles go long, and then we massively instrument. So we use AmpliTube, and we're starting to do a lot more in instrumentation than what we used to do in the past, because otherwise you just don't get enough signals from the market on how they're using it. But what we don't go to for customers, and I'm very maniacal about this, I don't go to customers to ask them for feature requests. I go to customers to ask them for problems. And I don't go to customers for specifically in breakthrough innovations to say, this is how you should go about solving that problem. Like that's something that we have to come up with a thesis and then go to the customer after the thesis has come up, has been formulated, and see if they can then respond to it. But the data collection exercise, in my mind, is a pretty important one to not a great product is a combination of initial instinct along with some data that validates the instinct. Oftentimes, I think we've gone too much on instinct, and then we pivoted too much on data. And I think you have to have something right in the middle, because if you don't have the right amount of instinct and you only have data, I think you can actually end up building something. Like, for example, I'll give you a thing. One of my least favorite metrics is time spent, right? Because you should actually talk about value created rather than time spent. Because sometimes you might have very high time spent. You think, oh, from a data perspective, this is great. It's like, no, the person just wanted to get out of that as fast as they could. Like, they didn't want to do this, but they actually spent 15 minutes when it should have been a 1-minute task. You screwed up. So like, what can you do to make sure that that doesn't happen on a regular basis? I think we're out of time, but if there's any questions, I'll be around for the next few minutes. Thank you for coming. Hopefully this was useful. If you want a job in product management, we're applying very aggressively at Box. So, join Stefan in submitting your resume. It'd be great. Okay, thank you. All right, thanks so much.
All right. All right, thank you so much. So now it is time for our shout outs. There's basically anyone here who would like to, anyone who would like to come up and is looking for a job or would like to maybe hire someone or looking for a co-founder or someone to speak with, could come up and talk. I also wanted to say that you will be receiving an email from Products Account where you can give us feedback, an NPS score on this event. We'd love your feedback, so please, when you get that email, do fill it out. And of course, we have another event next month, October 24th, here at Yelp. I'll be Stripe product lead Shreyas Doshki, and we'll be talking about making product in Stripe. So for now, shout outs. Anybody would like to come up? And we have some great swag from Box here as well. So first 10 people that come up here will get a nice tile so they can find their lost car keys. Or their lost dog, maybe. Shout outs?
No one wants a tile?
Just line up over here.
Tile is a great gift. I'm from Lever. My name's Karina Yen. I manage our design team. We're actively hiring for a director of product. So we recently hired an SVP of product, and we have a great product team that includes 4 designers and 4 product managers and product operations specialists. So yeah, come talk to me if you're interested.
Where will you be?
Standing back there somewhere, I guess. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan. I'm the founder of userleap.com, and userleap is an automated user research team. It's a JavaScript snippet. You add it to your product. We start analyzing all of your visitors, and we start running in-product microsurveys to better understand your customer experience. And we'll collect tens of thousands of pieces of feedback. We'll analyze all that feedback with machine learning and recurrent neural network, and then we'll summarize all the feedback so you can help improve your product. If you want to try it out, come find me after, and I can help you get set up.
Where will you be?
I'll be back over here on the right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Clement. I'm a product manager at Blend. And so just want to tell you a little bit more about Blend, kind of what we do, as we are actively hiring. Blend is basically like TurboTax for mortgages. So it's a really easy way for borrowers to apply for mortgages, kind of instead of having to go into a branch and waiting in line and having to go through all these really weird questions and bring documentation. Blend enables borrowers to be able to apply for mortgages through their mobile phones, through their browser, et cetera. And so, we're currently working with some of the largest financial institutions in the United States, Wells Fargo, US Bank, and 90 others. We're actively looking for roles of all types, whether you're in services, whether you're an engineer, a designer, a product manager, et cetera. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to be standing over there by all those empty seats, so feel free to find me. Again, I'm Clement at Blend. I would love to talk to you about how to make mortgages better, just because we fundamentally believe that changes a lot of people's socioeconomic paths here in the United States. So really excited, really passionate about the work that I'm doing. Please come find me. Thanks.
Hello all, this is Ram. I work as a product manager at HelloSign, an electronic signature company. We've recently launched a product that's going to revolutionize PDFs. So we're dealing with PDFs even though we have e-signatures. So we are eliminating PDFs from the equation and creating, giving a user a mobile-friendly experience using web forms and automatically creating the PDF documents at the backend so that the end user never has to interact with the PDF, pinch and zoom, and all that stuff. So we're actively hiring for PMs. So if you're interested, I'll be on that side as well. Please feel free to reach out.
Anyone else for shoutouts? Going once, going twice.
Take 6 towels home with us? Sure, we just give away towels now.
Got a shout out? All right. Okay, here we go.
So I'm a little bit unique in that I'm actually an engineer, but an engineer with product focus. My name's Christopher, and I'm from the League, and we are hiring engineers, particularly engineers with product focus sort of attitude. So if you're an engineer, you're looking for a job, and you believe in the mission of helping people find the one, the soulmate that there is out there for them, come talk to me. I'll be back there.
One more.
I'm going to do a generic announcement because honestly, I just filled the product management role on my team. But I am a senior product manager for analytics at Autodesk. I just kind of wanted to announce as a general statement, we're hiring a lot of people. We have a lot of product management roles open, both on our product in analytics for internal and also customer-facing product managers. So check out Autodesk and kind of take a look.
Everyone is just hiring and no one's looking for a job, there's a problem.
Okay. In about 5 months, contact me and I'll be looking for a job.
Great. Okay. Well, we have this. Oh, wait. We have more. All right. All right. If anybody else wants more, you can just stand up over here on the side and you can come up.
All right. I just want to restore symmetry. My name is Manoj, a friend of Jitu's. I'm actually just come back from a sabbatical. I'm actually looking for opportunities. Most recently, I was a senior director at Rally Health, which is a digital platform. So I'm going to be talking to every one of you guys and come and chat with you guys. But I want to get one of those too.
Hi, everybody. I'm Zafar. I'm at a kick scooter company called Scoot Networks. We're hiring across product and engineering. I'm in the operations team, but happy to chat with anyone who is interested in learning more about Scoot. I will be right there on where the empty seats are at.
Hi, I'm evening out this marketplace. My name's Rose Liu. I'm a second-year MBA student at Wharton. Spent the summer interning in product strategy at LinkedIn, but interested in PM opportunities. So I'll be over there talking to those guys, but thanks.
Hi, my name is Leah. I am a data scientist at a fintech company called FICO. I am looking to transition to a product management role from a data scientist background. So most likely I'll be on that side talking to these people, but if you have experience transitioning from an analytics role into a product-focused role, I would love to get your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Vineeth. I'm the co-founder and head of product of a company called OnQ. We're an early stage company. We are a sales and technology platform for local moving companies. So it's a pretty underserved market. We're signing up customers as fast as we can. And we are looking for a customer success manager. I haven't heard that yet, but if any of you is interested in a role like that, we're having a hard time keeping up with our customer base, making sure they're successful, maintaining good relationships with them. So if any of you or if you know somebody, I would love to talk to you. I'll be over there. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have the space for another 25 minutes or so, so feel free to mingle, network, grab some more food if you like. And wait, one more thing, and then this is it.
One last thing, and then we're done. We need more women in tech. So for all the men that are in this room, if you're building a team and you don't have 50% of your team being women, being female, you're doing something wrong in the way that you're structuring your team. And women aren't going to be able to solve this problem without men. So make sure that if you're a man, it's your responsibility to make sure that when we look 10 years from now, 50% of the workforce in tech is females thriving in leadership positions. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.